Welcome to Innovate presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Today, we're delighted to have our guest, Seema Alexander. Thank you for joining us today. And could you please introduce yourself and providing insights on your tech background and expertise? But a
Absolutely.
little bit, later we're going to dive into it.
I'm just going to give you at a high level, Bob. Thank you for having me on this
My pleasure.
podcast. So my name is Seema Alexander. I play a couple hats, and I think it's going to be a really fun, interesting conversation. So I have run an advisory practice that repositions companies. So Bob, we'll talk about it, but I have been on a mission to solve for this problem. You hear 8 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 18 to 24 months, which is
Correct.
very normal. And
Yeah.
most people have to go through that challenge and get to the other end, and that's okay. Not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, but the numbers that kept hitting me was like at 5 years and 10 years, 50% of businesses fail, right? And so for a very long time, I worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, and I've come up with a formula that I use in my advisory practice called a unique method. And that's really to help companies understand that who they were when they first started is never where they end up. And it's a repositioning exercise that strategically gets people to get clear on who they are today, what they do best, what they do uniquely and differently, and then they really grow and scale from there. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But
Absolutely. We're going to
yeah.
talk about that big number. So you're saying 50% out of new businesses fail. And what's the period of that? Like, is it a year or 2 or 3 years?
So at 5 years, at 10 years, those in bigger
5 years.
inflection points, that's kind of when things start to, because it takes a lot longer than you think, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so within that, Bob, like the last several years, I've been working with, I worked in every industry you can imagine, but emerging tech became a common theme for me, where it was smart cities and then deep into Web3 and blockchain. And then the last several years in artificial intelligence, initially was asked to advise a artificial intelligence development environment called Magic ML. And
Hmm.
that's when I got a lot deeper into understanding from true visionaries in the space how we are in the biggest technological revolution of our time.
Yes, we are. Yes.
And so I'll go deep into that story, but that also allowed me and a few partners to start an AI company called Virgent AI earlier this year, where we help companies move from where we say AI curious to AI powered or AI empowered. So we create AI agents and AI agent enabled softwares for companies, to automate, coordinate. We'll go into that. And my last hat, which is really all happens super organically, I am very passionate about entrepreneurship and growth. And so I grew up in the Washington, D.C. metro area, but I left for college or left after college for 17 years. I lived in New York for a long time. And I came
Wow.
back to DC about 7 years ago. And I got, when we think DC, we think politics and we think government, right?
Government.
Contracting, all the things.
Yes.
And so I was looking for where are my innovators at? Like where do they all hang out? And I was asked to speak at this organization called DC Startup Week, and I found my innovators. And what that is a now has become, this is a ninth year in running, and I got involved in their third year, and I'm one of the co-chairs there. So it's the largest entrepreneurial conference and community. We support about 15,000 entrepreneurs locally in this area.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
we do conferences and content, and it's a really cool thing. So I would say my
Amazing.
intersection is emerging tech, brand positioning, and sort of this community building aspect.
Well, I know it's going to be extremely insightful interview. I mean, this is amazing. A lot to talk about, like to bring up. Just curious for our listeners and for our viewers and for me, what got all this started? What motivated you? What put you on that path? If you take us back to your teenage years, what
No,
kind of initiate this kind of interest to get involved on that path?
it's interesting because I have a podcast too, and I asked this similar question, and a lot of entrepreneurs would share, you know what? I used to sell baseball cards in high school, and they all had this story where they were entrepreneurs as little kids or
Yes.
sold lemonade, and it just got them excited. For me, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and we were like my parents were immigrants from India. One of those stories came here with nothing, thought America had streets of gold, but realized it's a lot of work and a lot of sweat equity. They ended up starting the first Indian vegetarian restaurant catty corner to the White House, Bob, in the 1970s. And
Wow.
yeah, it was really cool. I mean, they built community, they built a big brand reputation, they built a couple locations, and my dad had a travel agency, and then originally I think they had a grocery store. But the story goes like this: I started working when I was 12 years old, and it was just like you learn a lot when you're actually in it at a young age.
Yes.
It went
Yes.
from doing really, really well to close to bankruptcy in the mid 90s. So
Wow.
imagine it's like your mid teens and you start to see your world fall apart because, at that stage, my parents ended up getting a divorce. My dad tragically passed a couple years later. And I think it's honestly, Bob,
Sorry.
where I don't know, it's okay. It's why and who I am today is because of, our history and our
Yeah.
past. Why I'm so passionate about business and growth is because I had empathy for founders at a young age because I'm like, people don't know what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Mm-mm.
There's a lot of hard work, and as operators, if you're listening, like, you're working really hard to get to that outcome or get to that customer's like request, all the things to build your brand, and you're janitor in chief in a lot of ways until you can really scale. But because of what I knew and understood what was really happening on the back end of most businesses, I got hooked, if you will, at a young age to like understand and how do I solve for it. I'm a big solver. Um, but funny enough, I took a little twist. I wanted more stability after college and spent 17 years in New York, but 13 of those in corporate America at Prudential Financial.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about that because it really did stem a lot of the entrepreneurial piece of what I do today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Very inspiring story, I have to say. And I like the quote you said, janitor to chief. Janitor to chief. I like that. That's so true.
Mhm.
So true. I admit it. I say it myself. I've been there more than once. Absolutely. And in order to be in it or to win it, you really have to grind in it. It's literally you got to dig in to be part of it. To,
Absolutely.
to me, any entrepreneur is like owning a restaurant. You see the owner always floating around. One minute he's greeting, one minute he's serving, one minute he's sweeping a broken glass, a broken dish, and the next minute he's making sure the order is being delivered. The next minute he's in the kitchen. You have to be. You have
Yeah.
to be. To me, that's what a successful CEO, an entrepreneur, or an owner who would really thrive in. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? Let's start with your business growth strategies. It's really interesting and very very intriguing. Can we talk about that and what really made you pursue it?
Yeah. Look, as I mentioned, right,
Yeah,
I was in this sort of place where I'm like, why do all these businesses fail? Like, it's a constant path. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, I understand that when people take a leap and start their own businesses, I mean, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of persistence. It takes a lot of resilience.
it
But
does.
I'm a strategist at heart. I look to get to the core root of the problem and solve from there. And I kept seeing trends, Bob. I kept seeing like, you know, when you start your business, I promise you, you are never the same business a few years later, right? Every business
Correct.
evolves because you learn, you have some, great, you have real challenges. You're starting to understand your market better. You hopefully get some traction in the process. And what happens in business is a lot of times because you're operating and working really hard within your business, many people don't step away and sort of strategically think about, how do we want to be positioned in the marketplace? How do we want to
Hmm.
be seen? What makes us really unique and different? and and what when they don't do those sort of exercises, and it's more they end up looking like everybody else even though they're very good at what they do, right?
Yeah.
Their marketing and their branding and their partnerships become more generic and not strategic, right? And so as I was working on post prudential my prudential career, and I created this advisory practice. I just got obsessed to helping all these individuals and these companies be at that growth stage. And that's when I created the unique method out of this process because I was like, this is
Hmm.
the step strategic decision making framework that CEOs and founders really need to go through. And so I've been able to work with over 1,000 founders with this process, and it's really brought a lot of clarity in these companies, because everything just becomes much more intentional after that, right? And so now you're not trying to be everything to everybody. You're focused on who you serve best. You start saying no to people because you're like, they're actually not that most ideal for us. We were just saying yes for revenue, but that actually distracts you from scaling. You can't put in processes and operational things if you just try to say and do all the things that you think you can do well, but you really can't do everything well, right?
It's interesting that you watched your dad and your mom and dad, break up apart because of, the struggles that your dad later on faced in business by almost going to bankruptcy.
Hmm.
And a lot of people would say, you know what? I learned from this. I will never repeat it. I don't want it to take a toll on me, on my relationship, on my business, on my life, on my mental health. No, I'll just get a job and that's it. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. You kind of digged into it and you say, you know what? I want to fix the problem. I want to know why it happened. I owe it at least not just to me, to my dad, to my mom. Even my dad passed away. I owe it to him. I want to know why. Why
Yeah.
can't we fail? I could easily walk away, you said, probably, and you didn't. You worked for corporate America for 13 years. You said you worked for Prudential. How
Yeah.
did that kind of shape your approach into being an entrepreneur and helped you with your approach and the strategic consulting and all of that?
It was huge actually, because I went in with an entrepreneurial mindset. There
Hmm.
were certain things that happen at Prudential that make me who I am as in the entrepreneurial world. The first
Correct.
couple of years I got to spend, in internal communications, and why that's important is I was responsible for 3,000 communications that went out, and what I learned there is communication is everything.
Hmm.
Who things go to, when things go to them, what level of communication, how much detail needs to go to people. And so I think communication solves so many problems in every
Yes.
industry. But that was just something fundamentally that was taught to me at an early stage in my career that I cannot appreciate enough, because it's helped me build partnerships. It's helped me build my companies and my brands, because that is such an important skill set. But the two other core things that really got me thinking more on the entrepreneurial route is I had a role where I had to take 2,500 financial planners. They're commodities, Bob, in the space. They look like everybody else, right? How do you make them unique and different, and how do you scale their business was part of my role, right? And so that was an interesting sort of, the world of storytelling and target marketing, all the things, right, to help these individuals build out larger businesses, right? But the biggest and the last piece at Prudential was I actually got to work on the historical repositioning of Prudential Financial with all the chief marketing officers and the CEO. And at
Hmm.
that point, it was a 136-year-old company. So when I
Wow.
talk about the unique method, it's a lot of the foundations I learned from this multi-million-dollar exercise, because they went through
Yeah.
the same thing. They had seven incredible businesses, but they were seen as this stodgy insurance company, and they had to change perception in the marketplace. So they had to build out the social proof. They had to figure out how they wanted to be seen in the marketplace, all of the core decisions, and then their whole marketing and brand and partnership started to evolve, so that
Yes.
this new world of where Prudential was headed was how they were going to be seen in a modern financials as a modern financial services company.
Hmm.
And that was that moment for me where I was like, wow, like, do entrepreneurs do this? Like, they don't do it in this way because it's super expensive, but do they even go through this practice, this exercise to get them to the other end to say, wow, like, this is actually who we are and what we do best, like, and all the things that now start to associate around skill when you're clear and intentional.
Amazing. So I see from working at Prudential Insurance, you kind of, the unique method framework idea came through, and you said, okay, I'm going to implement this to my own entrepreneurship journey, and I'm going to make a business out of it.
Correct.
And how does it solve, you know, for entrepreneurs, this unique method of framework that you created?
Yeah. I mean, what it solves for is I go back to this concept of when you're in business and you just continue to put your head down and do all the things, a lot of times you are looked like as a commodity, right?
Hmm.
And some people can move from, hey, we're experts and specialists, say in digital marketing, or we're very good at, this particular thing in government contracting or whatever, right? And this is our specialty. But what the unique method does is either you get people from this commodity to specialty, or the specialty to what I call a Sherpa. So,
Hmm.
it's interesting when you think about a Sherpa, they're guiding you through to an outcome. So a
Hmm.
lot of companies talk about, hey, what's our unique value proposition? And it ends up being like a feature set of things that are unique to them, which is great. But what I talk a lot about in this unique method and get people to understand is it's you're focused on your unique customer transformation. How are you transforming and creating outcomes for your customers? And what can you own that makes you unique and different compared to everybody else? And so this process gets these CEOs and founders to get that level of clarity. So when they go and have their marketing budgets or their brand, and this is just a good case in point,
Hmm.
when you're starting out in business, a lot of times the brand you create is for yourself, right? And just think about that, right? It's like, this is how I want to be seen, and you kind of like do your thing, and you don't know what you don't know, right? Well,
Just
what
an idea and a dream.
it's an
Yes.
idea and a dream, and you put a website together, all the things. But what this process allows you to do is say, wow, this brand is not about me. It's about our ideal clients. So we need to be speaking to them directly. We need to be speaking to their pain points and the way that we have
Yes.
been able to create these outcomes. Because now we've been in business 5 years, now we've been in business 10 years. Like, let's, instead of being this broad management consulting company, let's own the fact that we're very good at operational transformation. And now that's our company and what we're going to be known for in the marketplace. So we're not
Hmm.
trying to compete with the big four. We're competing with other boutique firms that do what we do, but now we know how we do it better. Our approach is better, right? And that's what it does for companies, right? It just gives them that leg up to stand out. And
Hmm.
it's easy to say, oh, well, like, to create, like, what's all these like keywords and like in entrepreneurial classes or other things, but like, if you don't analyze your customers and look at the trends and actually look at the market and go through a process like this, it's easy to just keep doing what you're doing, like,
Absolutely.
and just continuing to say, you know what, that's a great opportunity, I'm going to say yes, that's a great opportunity. And then you're never seen as being really good at the things that you are. You're just trying to be everything for everybody.
It's interesting. So far, this interview, it's really turning to be literally an instruction how to start your own company and what the thing that do's and don't. You
Yeah,
know,
100%.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. I love the way this thing is going. And it's really, I didn't plan on it, but actually it's going that way. And it's very insightful for a lot of entrepreneurs or people that want to start a business. It doesn't matter what it is. Really, there's a lot of things that is done wrong from the beginning and kind of make them lose that interest, that enthusiasm that they initially had to start with. Um, I don't want to talk about it too much, but you know what? I will promote it because you graced us with your presence here on Entrepreneurs in Tech. You also have your own podcast, and it's called From Spaghetti to Growth. I love the title. Really love the title. Spaghetti is always tangled. So you kind of untangle the whole thing and elevate it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about business, to your point, as you
Yes.
start off early, you're kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall. You don't know what you
Yes.
don't know, right? You don't,
Yes.
you're trying to figure out your first sale. You're trying to figure out your best offers, your product, and workflows. So, right. And so I interview founders talking about their journey into how do you get from here to where you were successfully, but all the spaghetti in between. And
Yeah.
what changed about this season, we're about to launch season 2, is there's a heavy twist for AI, Bob. Because what I'll tell you now, in terms of going back to my childhood and why now I started connecting the dots with artificial intelligence and the
Hmm.
importance, all of that for business right now, was the reason my parents' company failed. It wasn't because they weren't good at what they do and the food wasn't excellent and all the things. There was definitely some customer service things and other things, sure. But it was in the 90s. And do you know what was happening in the 90s, Bob? Think of,
Well, I was there.
yeah, we were there, right? The internet, right? The internet was rising in the 90s. And so all of a sudden you have these new categories, and there's online marketing and online marketplaces and SEO searches and AdWords and Google, but they were not paying attention, Bob, right? For them,
So they
they were
stuck in the past. They
they
stuck at a
were
certain point. They didn't move forward. You're saying?
they didn't move forward because it was emerging technology. They were focused on operating, and
Yes.
they missed it, and their competitors didn't miss it. So their competitors were, out there doing their advertising, getting their websites up, doing all the things, just like with artificial intelligence. And why I keep sounding the alarm, because it's bigger than the advent of the internet, and there are a lot of businesses that if they don't pay attention, they're either unfortunately going to stay super stagnant or fail, right? Because there's a
Yes.
lot
Correct.
coming down the pipe. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That emerging tech. Now we are in it. We're in that era right now. Actually, the emerging technologies going to that kind of metaverse, kind of virtual uh, way of doing business with AI involved in it, and I would bring in also what do you call it, blockchain, and there's others. There's a lot, kind of, it's hard to explain, but there's so many things happening that eventually it's going to come together, and everybody looking, hey, am I doing the right thing? What direction should I take in this technology? AI. One thing is AI. The other thing is the metaverse. The third thing is blockchain. How can we? You got Web 3 and Web 4 also. So
Absolutely.
yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about DC Startup Week, which is you big part of it. You're very heavily involved in it, and the role, the technology, and evolving with it, and how does it shape the entrepreneurial success?
Yeah, I mean, DC Startup Week is the largest entrepreneurial community in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I've been honored and blessed to be a co-chair the last several years, and really building out sort of the brand. But the ethos of it is that we really believe DC, Maryland, Virginia is one of the biggest innovation hubs in the world, and that's how we want to be seen. And so emerging technology is a big play here. I think about 7 years ago, when Amazon was looking for their headquarters or second headquarters. Originally it was supposed to be in New York and then in Northern Virginia. They secured the deal, if you will, for HQ2. And then you started to see Northern Virginia really build out a lot of their emerging technology companies. And Maryland is known for sort of the biotech and quantum computing, and DC is sort of like, they all are now focused on AI, but Web3, and obviously the government being there has a lot of innovation. And so for us, DC Startup Week has become, what we're actually focused on is that we're going to create the next South by Southwest of the Mid Atlantic. So this is our ninth year in running. If you're listening and want to stop by, please come. October 21st to the 25th is our 5-day conference. We're adding a festival day, which is going to be that Saturday. And it's really going to continue to build. So now we're not just getting local entrepreneurs and investors and ecosystem partners. We're getting people from the world coming here to really understand the technologies and the other entrepreneurial endeavors that are occurring in this region.
Interesting. I'm going to join myself actually.
Please.
Would love. Yes, absolutely. Amazing. Amazing. Um, what motivated you to start Disruptive CEO Advisory, and what
Well,
challenges did you face?
yeah, I mean, that goes back to the unique method. So, like, the real truth is, when I was 36 years old and I was still working at Prudential, I had one of two midlife awakenings, Bob. So in
Yes.
between both of my children, I had a pulmonary embolism, and it was a blood clot that went from my calf to my lungs. Almost died twice in a week that year. It was
I
pretty crazy.
and I lost my dad that way.
Oh, I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
5 years ago. Yes.
Wow, I am
Yes,
so
same thing. That's exactly what he had.
Yeah, and as you could imagine, going through something like that, like, basically I was in DC when this all happened, and I was at a
Wow.
conference. I couldn't breathe and all the things. I go to the hospital and I couldn't even get
Mm.
into the MRI machine, and eventually they told me it was a PE. But as soon as I started feeling a little better, they gave me some blood thinners. Within 3 days, I was back at the office because that's what I was thinking about. And all the symptoms came back, Bob, like every single one. And I ended up back at the hospital. And then the ER doctor told me, while I was on the table there, he's like, Seema, you could have been a widowmaker not once but twice this week because the medication didn't result, like it didn't clot, the clot was still there basically.
Wow.
And so this round I was in the hospital for a week, and as the months progressed, I started reflecting, and I was like, man, like my goal was to be a CMO of this Fortune 500. And I'm like right under the CMO of the retirement business. I'm building all the P&L experience, all the things. But I really had this passion for entrepreneurs, and I had already started doing a lot of consulting. And I was like, maybe I need to listen to my gut now. Maybe it's not, maybe it's that time that I make that big leap. And I'm sure, Bob, you interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's always some sort of crazy moment where what
Yes.
makes them, and a lot of them medical, it's kind of crazy, or somebody around them has, had
Yes.
something challenging occur, or marriages are falling up, something, right? That is a catalyst. And so that was my catalyst. And when I started Disruptive, I mean, I just wanted to help and grow companies. So I didn't have the unique method at that time. And that's where year over year, I was working with so many entrepreneurs, and it was like an advisory practice. And I used to run accelerators, and I used to like and do a lot of workshops, and it was just my passion because I knew, again, because of everything that happened with my parents, and then the experiences that I had through the repositioning exercise at Prudential. And at this point, it's been over 1,000 founders, and the unique method was created. But I also knew, like, I really, that emerging tech side of me kept coming out, right? And now with the dots all connecting back to the internet days and what AI is really, really about to do, in terms of revolutionizing business and the way that we live, I had to, this to me is bringing all of my world. So it went from heavily focusing on the advisory practice to launching Virgin AI earlier this year. And it just fully is bringing on all my skill sets, which is really exciting.
Extremely inspiring story, I have to say. So many things been thrown at you, and I think I'm gonna change. Probably we have to change the title of this show. It's called "From Entrepreneurs in Tech to Entrepreneurs in Life."
Yeah.
Definitely, you're really amazing. I mean, you really, your story by itself just extremely inspiring. A lot of things been thrown at you since your teenage years. You lost your dad, failed in business, then you just kept going and you just never let your head down. You kept your eyes on the prize and you kept going. Then the health issues that you came across and you overcome all of that. And this is pretty inspiring. And if this is not it, I don't know what. Absolutely. Let's talk about Virgin AI. It's extremely, extremely interesting product that you created. The AI agent for businesses and software solutions.
Yeah, so I have a couple co-founders, but Jesse Alton and myself, he's the
Mm,
CEO and I'm the president. We're both co-founders. He used to also be one of the co-founders of Magic ML, which was that artificial intelligence development environment that I was advising. And as we got deeper in that ecosystem that they were building was really focused on this next generation of AI engineers and using
mhm,
like a no code, low code platform to start to build what I would say is like the new WordPress meets Zapier for
mhm.
artificial intelligence, right? And the development side. And
Yes.
what was happening, and I'll give you some examples of what this means, but it was, this world of AI agents being able to have highly autonomous or semi-autonomous AIs doing things on your behalf that could do
Yes.
like deep analysis or
Yeah.
predictive analytics or personalization or targeting in a very different way, was what I was learning was possible today, right? And all the pieces of what, with machine learning could really bring to the table for a business as they stand today, and then obviously what's going to happen in the future. And so that's where the idea for Virgin really came, because when we were working on the marketplace for the AI, new AI engineers, if you will, there were a lot of businesses asking us, well, can you create us an AI agent? Can you, help us create these automated workflows for staff augmentation, or help us coordinate all these different pieces together so we can use our data for actual great insights and outcomes within for our own businesses. And so with Virgin, we launched in January. We've been building out AI agents, and we've been building out AI enabled softwares. And it is, again, this is just the start. We have a big scaling plan. So right now we're focused on doing these projects, building out these agents, and we're building out business tool sets and scaling in different verticals as well. So it's really exciting, Bob. But to me, it's like it is it to me, I just keep sounding the alarm in every podcast and every time I'm able to be on stage of how important it is for companies and one of the core things that Virgin does is we go in and we look at what's the most high impact, high value, high ROI opportunities to leverage artificial intelligence in your company.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are used to, the chat GPTs, and there are a lot of products out there that are chat GPT wrappers, but they're not fully custom and safe. And we don't know what we don't know yet with all the LLMs and where they're going to head, right? And so, they're obviously a core element between that and generative AI that has made a lot of this mainstream. And
Yeah.
so, if you're listening to the podcast and haven't played around, you got to play around with that to start. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but for the companies that are very serious about, we need an AI first strategy. We need to really look at, from staff augmentation to our customer service to, the way that our customer experiences can be unique. This is the right time to start to think about that. And that's what we help companies do.
Um, you have a mission and an impact of growth for 1 million entrepreneurs by 2035. That's a pretty ambitious number
Hmm.
and goal. What strategies are you proving most effective?
Look, for me, it's being able to speak anywhere, anyhow, right? Because the
Yes.
concept of the unique method and the concept of AI, these are my two biggest, and brands. So it's like these three things coming together. I speak about them all the time. But I think with AI agents, right? Because you can now train an AI agent with all of your information, right? All of the things that I've been preaching for years, and like, with all the workshops and all the customers that we work with, all the things. So I think it's actually going to be easier to amplify with the technology that we have on hand, right? And my goal is, I mean, I'm in the process of writing a book and be an international speaker, and all the things. So there is that, and building out very smart strategic partnerships is going to be a big play there, right? Because look, at the end of the day, everyone needs when you're in business, you do have to figure out your unique positioning at this stage, right? But with
Yes.
AI, things are shifting, right? So it's like there is a connotation, or there's a narrative out there that everyone should just be a generalist going forward because AI is going to be smarter than us and we're not going to need human intelligence. My narrative is different, and I said no, the human loop and human intelligence is always going to be needed and stronger. But when you position yourself to be that expert in the space, and then you have the AI technology enabling that in a whole different way, those are the companies that are going to stand out in the marketplace. And so, um, going back to your strategies, it's leveraging AI the way it's meant to be leveraged. It's leveraging my network and the partnerships and the speaking, and as much as I can get out there, that's the goal.
Amazing. What some of the most common misconception in the AI tech world that you encounter, and how do you address them?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty, Bob, right? Like, so people, the key is people, one, don't know the value in it fully because they're like, well, I don't know what to invest in something that I don't know what the outcome is going to look like. There are not enough examples. There are not enough practical examples. So
Correct.
when and so when they're comparing, like, okay, here's an automated workflow, what is that actually, if something is going to cost you 20, $50,000 or $100,000, there's a lot of like doubt of like, well, is that worth it? Do I just wait until somebody creates a niche product? And part of the other challenge is, you probably see it too because you're in the space, is when you start researching things, you're going to see a lot of products come your
Yes.
way that are getting targeted, right? And a lot of those companies are just creating GPT, like a chat GPT wrapper, and they're just like solving for one thing. But if something goes down with the model, or it's not custom to your business, right? So I think there's some just there everyone, number one is educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. That's all we can do, right? Is and start to get over the hump of like, AI is insane. Like, yes, there is the sci-fi side of things, and I get that, right? And there are real concerns, and policy and all those things should take action from the beginning. We're all focused on AI for good. And specifically, when you're in business, you have to pay attention right now because it's going to impact you in the next 18 to 24 months. I keep saying every business, every division, every workflow is going to be disrupted. And so it's
Yes.
really important to start to pay attention right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good advice. You know, let's put the entrepreneurial hat on, and this is one of your great things that you're going to shine on also beside everything else you're doing. What advice, obviously for our listeners and viewers are going to be watching this episode and they're going to be inspired by your story, by your journey, and the way you carved your way in life and how far you got so far and how resilient you are against all odds, as they say. Any aspiring advice that you would give to our tech entrepreneurs or any entrepreneurs that really want to carve their own path and their own journey?
Yeah. Look, I think there are a couple of things. One, always go back to all of your experiences. Just because if you weren't in tech today doesn't mean you don't have these unique experiences to bring together for whatever the big problem you're trying to solve for. I know a lot of non-technical founders who are doing really, really big things, right?
Hmm.
So in that, look for a good technical partner. I think that is really, really important when you start to play with emerging technologies. You just want somebody who understands it better than you, right? So they can guide and advise you. So that would be number one. I mean, the other thing is, I have to continue to preach. You have to focus on AI first. I mean, I was just at a TechStars demo event in Baltimore, and there were 10 companies that did like a demo or a pitch, right, about their companies, and 8 out of 10 of them were AI first companies in every
Wow.
industry. From HR, there was a performance review company that's using AI to help employees and employers, like really help facilitate that whole ongoing performance management process. To there's definitely things in music, and real
Wow.
estate, right? I mean, we were working with somebody to help create an AI agent to take away the world of like the buyer's market, buyer's real estate agent, right? Those transactions, and how do you automate those workflows? So the biggest thing for you is educate yourself with AI, understand that no company going forward cannot have an AI first, or some concepts of AI within it, and then you'll evolve and get better as the newer technology gets more accessible, and it's already accessible. But if you're really trying to differentiate yourself and your experiences, take it very seriously right now.
Amazing. Um, it's been a great interview so far, extremely insightful. Anything you would like to share? Any new projects coming up? I know you mentioned there's the event that coming up in October,
Yeah.
Tech Week in DC,
Yep.
and also talking about Virgin AI you want to mention. So anything you would like to go over again? Any projects for our listeners and viewers, where to go to, please feel free.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in understanding how do you move from like an AI curious to AI powered, if you go to virgent.ai, there's a free guide, right? And it's pretty comprehensive. It's like 30, 40 pages, and it'll just help you really start to get more of a better understanding of, what's happening in the marketplace and how you could really start to think about things in your own business. The other, I mean, DCStartupWeek.org. If you go there, you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a bunch of, our newsletters are packed with resources, even if you're not within the area. But if you're growing a business, it's free resources, lots of great events. And of course, our signature event is October 21st to the 26th. So do attend. It is 300, 300 speakers, 150 activations, networking, happy hours every evening. We're going to have music. We're going to have, I mean, it is, sponsors, expos, career fairs, you name it. If you haven't visited DC, come visit us, because it will help you build and accelerate your business path forward. And then you're going to have fun doing it. And I think that's the key. Is business is about solving problems, but you got to have fun, and you got to build a really great community around you, because Bobby, it's not easy. And you
No,
got to be
it's not.
resilient.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, always, all great things must come to an end. I would say thank you for joining us today and on Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Be sure to connect with us on social media. And until next time, keep innovating and stay curious. Always, I say that. And take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
My pleasure. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech podcast. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.